Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1009. Payment is always exacted for what's bestowed. Leonard immediately felt very relieved when he heard Old Man Pallas. He cast his attention back to the angel-level battle that happened in the afternoon and asked rather curiously, "Which Pathways angel does that giant serpent phantom belong to?" Pallas Zoroast fell silent for a moment before saying with a sigh, "Snake of Fate. The counselor of the life school of thought. A sequence 1 angel. I never expected him to join them. Counselor of the life school of thought? He has also become a blessed of Mr. Fool? The corresponding card is the Wheel of Fortune?" Leonard's eyes widened as he realized that Mr. Fool's faction seemed comparable to the 7 Orthodox churches. It was truly unfathomable. Death Consul. Snake of Fate. Incomplete Messenger. There are 3 angels under Mr. Fool. It's no wonder Klein was able to become a demigod so quickly. Just how long has it been and I've already been embroiled in a battle at the angel level? It's really unimaginable how things will develop in the future. Leonard held the letter and sat on the sofa. He felt another sense of urgency towards digesting his Soul Assurer potion and advancing to Spirit Warlock. He had been busy placating the souls in the Backlund region recently, but due to the numerous missions, he was still far from completing them. He couldn't find an excuse or opportunity to visit Tinjin City to steal the powers from that drop of the eternal blazing sun's blood. Furthermore, the arrival of Amon's avatars had been quicker than he had expected. South of the bridge, Rose Street, Harvest Church. Emlyn White, who had changed into a brown priest's robe, stood in front of a long table with candle stands. He watched Ernst Boyer working hard at wiping the altar before he raised his right hand and casually pointed. "To the side. Left side. That spot's dirty." Ernst Boyer, who also wore the clergyman attire of the Earth Mother, shot an angry look at Emlyn, but he still listened to his instructions and re-wiped the area he hadn't wiped seriously. "I know you're very mad. It's how I felt when I learned that you deliberately hid key information from the ancient castle until you sold me," Emlyn said with a smile, completely unfazed by his glare. "Also, I forgot to inform you. I'm also a Viscount. It happened last week." Sanguine Viscounts corresponded to the Moon Pathways Sequence 5 Scarlet Scholar. The advancement ritual required the illumination of the full moon. Apart from that, one had to gather different metals, gems, and be under creature blood that represented the different moon phases. It was rather complicated. However, Emlyn had long obtained the promise from the sanguine upper echelons that a free advancement ritual would be held for him. He could advance easily once the full moon came. As for the digestion of potions, Professor, he had completed digesting it without putting too much effort into it. This was because he often taught commoners who were willing to learn at the Harvest Church to learn about herbs and medicine, and even combinations of some special potions. And apart from usually collecting dolls, researching history, and doing volunteer work at the cathedral, he loved thinking about the different potions and considering how they could be used in different battle situations. "You're a Viscount?" Ernst Boyer abruptly stood up straight as he wore a flabbergasted look. Among the sanguine, as they were all long-lived, they had quite a huge population. The number of Beyonder characteristics was limited, so advancing was a very difficult endeavor. One had to be in a long line before they had the opportunity to advance. However, Emlyn White had only been a baron for half a year. Ernst remembered that it took him 60 years to go from baron to viscount. This was because his father had suffered an attack from artificial vampires. His passing left him the inheritance. Of course. Emlyn's smug smile grew obvious, but he remained restrained. "I obtained a sequence 5 Beyonder characteristics from artificial vampires." Ernst Boyer looked at Emlyn, momentarily at a loss for words. He felt that he had suffered a heavier blow than needing to do volunteer work at the Harvest Church. "Your expression is rather interesting," Emlyn Skedden said. "Perhaps one day you'll have to address me as Lord when I become an Earl." "Preposterous! What arrogance!" Ernst blurted. "I'm already very humble. I didn't mention I would become a duke, or even a princeps." How am I to be the Sanguine's Messiah without being an angel? Besides, in our tarot club, Mr. World has already advanced to become a demigod. Ma'am Hermit won't take much longer. This will definitely be a club filled with demigods. Emlyn chortled without arguing with Ernst like he usually would. He took on an attitude that whatever Ernst said was beneath him. Of course, he also understood that the advantage the Sanguine had after the Scarlet Scholar stage no longer existed. Becoming an Earl was in no way easier than an artificial vampire advancing to Shaman King. The digestion of the Scarlet Scholar potion is still relatively simple. All one needs to do is sincerely like the moon, worship the moon, and study the moon. This is what most Sanguine do usually. However, the corresponding ritual is in the hands of the demigods. Without their approval, even if I were to obtain a Shaman King beyond characteristic from the sun, I won't be able to become an Earl. Emlyn might be arrogant, but he knew very clearly what was required of him subsequently. There were two core powers of Scarlet Scholar. First, it was to create an environment that was advantageous to them. When the enemy wasn't good at spirituality, or things related to the spirit world, they could create the effects of the full moon. On the contrary, they would also make the moon vanish if necessary. Second, it was to gain an instantaneous blink and a spectral form state under a certain area of the moon's illumination. Even if they were smashed to bits by an enemy, they could still reform themselves under the moonlight. And the strength of these powers was derived from one's comprehension and research of the moon domain as Scarlet Scholars. As for the strengthening of darkness-related spells, the enhancements of potion effects, and the resistance towards nightmare-like influences, they were just supplementary. Ernst was enraged by Emlyn's attitude. Just as he was about to speak again, he saw the mountain-like half-giant, Utravsky, walk out from behind the cathedral. He hurriedly bent his back and bowed his head as he continued cleaning the altar. Emlyn White also picked up his cloth and the candle stand, wiping its surface with great proficiency. In the silent atmosphere, he thought of something. If he were to leave the Harvest Church now, would the upper echelons of the Sanguine force him to hand over the mystical items and supernatural props he obtained from Ernst? I really have no reason to reject their request, because some of the items don't belong to Ernst in the first place. Emlyn thought about it seriously and decided to return to the room later. He would set up a ritual and sacrifice the spoils of war he received to Mr. Fool. When the time came, he could split it with the other members like the Star and Justice. Oath of Rose cannot be sacrificed. It's only one part of the pair. Whoever obtains it will be discovered and identified by the wielder of the other ring. I'll just treat it as a spoil of war. I'll hand it over to Marquis Nibs tonight. I should be able to exchange it for some rewards. As for the rest, I won't participate in the splitting. Emlyn very quickly came up with a plan. As for whether the Sanguine upper echelons would bear a grudge over this, he wasn't too worried. This was because he would also mention in passing about the cooperation that the Rose School of Thought's Temperance faction had requested while handing over the Oath of Rose. This matter had happened last week. He had planned on informing the Sanguine upper echelon, but in the few mini-gatherings, the hangman had advised him to do so after the punishment operation. It would accentuate his importance and mitigate any anger or resentment. Striking with a stick and offering a carrot? At that moment in time, Emlyn suddenly had a deeper understanding of the suggestion. 160 Beauclun Street. Inside Dwayne Dantes' bedroom. The spoils of war received are pretty good. A diamond brooch that can raise one's energy and maintain lucidity while resisting spells that act on the body of heart and mind. A paper figurine that can prevent any fatal damage and psychic piercing. A belt that can produce sun and lightning damage. A wallet that contains more than 300 pounds. After receiving the sacrifice and returning to the real world, Klein silently sighed as he sat in front of his study desk. He then took out a transparent maggot. Upon seeing this maggot, he felt his head ache, recalling the pain of having his soul body fracture. This was a worm of spirit that he had fractured from himself. It was to be made into the payment given to Snake of Fate Will Septon. He already had an idea on how to replicate the item which could briefly allow someone to restore their strength. It was to use the worm of spirit as a vessel and copy the complete symbol from before to garner a response from the mysterious space above the gray fog. For this, the outcome of his divination was that it would be rather successful. That item's true essence is actually one of the powers of the Seer Pathways Sequence 3, Scholar of Yore. To borrow a portion of one's power from one's past self. Responding with the Fool's identity would definitely work. The only problem is that the corresponding dimensionality, mystery, complexity, and danger of the symbols cannot be directly engraved on different metal plates. According to Will Septon, I have to use cogitation and draw on my spirituality to draw it on the worm of spirit. If it succeeds, I'll make myself one. I'll look at myself from the past and see if it will be Klein Moretti's childhood, or myself hanging in the cocoon above the door of light. If it's the latter, it's best if I can confirm how long I've been hanging. Klein entered a cogitation state while in thought. Then, he kept constructing symbols with his mind, allowing his spirituality to repeat this process outside as it penetrated the worm of spirit. This was a complicated and difficult task. If he wasn't careful, it might lead to failure. As the invisible symbols fell and augmented the worm of spirit, Klein suddenly trembled. The worm of spirit ignited by itself and turned to ashes. Looking at his empty palm, Klein felt a headache. After a long period of silence, he silently muttered, "Life sure is difficult."